What's going on, everybody? LK here, back at it again with another video. And today, I'm going to be talking about something that's not actually really present in Dragon Ball, but it's a thing in fighting games in general. And some people feel a real type of way about this, and that is chip damage. That is correct. Chip damage. So chip damage is a weird thing to talk about in fighting games because it technically should be expected. So I've been playing fighting games myself for quite a long time now, to say the least, and I'm pretty used to it being in games, and I personally don't like it when it's not in the game, but I get why people don't like it. So for starters, let's just start with like chip damage in general. And it sucks because I have Frieza out here, but the real character I'm going to use to show off is Bardock. That is chip damage. So when you block some things in the game, you will take a little bit of damage despite not actually getting hit. Okay? And they call this chip damage. Now, in some games, chip damage is kind of a big deal. In other games, it's a non-factor. And I sort of feel like in more recent games, chip damage is not really a thing because it bothers new players. New players, there's a few things I think they were thinking. So one, the only time you should take damage is actually when you get hit by something. So like, if you get thrown, if you get like crossed or something, you should get hit. Chip damage, from a new player's perspective, is like a way to do damage without actually hitting somebody, which is, from their perspective, like not correct or something. But I would argue a couple things. So one, I think you actually do legitimately need chip damage in fighting games, and two, there is an actual good way to do it, which leads me to like another point I'll get to in the future, that Dragon Ball I think kind of needs chip damage, but I see why there is no chip damage, or like at least not chip damage where it should be. So one, for starters, I think you really do actually need chip damage in fighting games. So one thing about this game, so this is something I noticed in this game, and also another game that I used to play, Persona 4 Arena, is if we're going to talk about Frieza specifically, because I think it probably affects like Frieza and 21 the most, like the more defensive characters, the fact that they are the defensive characters, you know, technically, when they're zoning, especially alone, you don't have to be afraid of their zoning out. You could just take this, because as long as you just block, you take no damage. Like, there's no threat. All the damage people take from Frieza, outside of like Frieza having assist and stuff, or like 21 having assist and stuff, is either they're forcing their way in because they're so annoyed at just being kept out by this, or they just try to push another spot where they don't have to push. If you just sit there, or if you really work your way in slowly, then these characters literally don't do any damage unless they literally hit you. So in a standard fighting game, is standard fair to say? Am I making fun of Dragon Ball secretly by calling it standard? In other fighting games, I think it's probably better to say. In other fighting games, part of the threat of being zoned was that you couldn't just stay there. So usually, like when the zoner gets, like when you're up close like this, especially if you get the zoner to like block, it's kind of over. But if they're running away here and stuff, and you're sitting there, you're taking chunk after chunk of damage, so you have to like work your way in. They're good here, but they're not good here, right? They're not good here. Now, to be fair to Dragon Ball, like in the case of Frieza, like let's say, I know I'm full speaking, but I'll just do it like here, just for the sake of it. Like, Frieza does have ways to get in. Is he set the first? No. Frieza has ways to make you actually scared of the stuff he does, but it's not because you're sitting there blocking it, it's because he could use those things to get in and do offense. So it's kind of a more modern take on zoning. It's been kind of common in Arc Sys games, per se. Let's actually reset this. It's like once upon a time that actually, I believe that jailed in advantage. These days, these moves don't jail in advantage anymore. right? But those actually did use CGL advantage, so he used to be able to get in just like that. You can use beams, like a combination of using rocks plus beam or some type of full screen assist to like get him in so he could run offense. So in the scope of things, it's okay, but it really takes away from the solo character, especially. So another character that had this issue, not in this game, but I think of it because I think of like Yukiko in Persona 4 Arena. Her zoning was good, but once you learn that like she pretty much just gives you free meter, the fans don't do any chip, so her equivalent of this does no chip. You can just slowly work your way in, build meter at your own pace, get in, and like fuck her up. And Frieza is honestly is kind of the same. When Frieza doesn't have assist, especially, like you can just work your way in. Every time you try to slightly advance, you gain a little bit of meter, and then Frieza's fuzzyable, right? So once you get in, it's probably in the scope of this game the extreme of you got to this point where you're attacking, so like it's greatly in your favor. Now, this brings me to point 2, right? So it's okay that this game doesn't really have chip damage as a factor in the game, because one, it is for new players of fighting games, and that is something that obviously bothers them. Zoning bothers them. I can't count how many scrub codes are about all you do is spam fireballs, spam this, blah blah blah, whatever, right? But also, the game itself doesn't really have a mechanic to deal with chip. The closest thing would actually probably be to... Oops, that's on random, whoops. Would be probably to actually reflect, right? So, one thing about... It's not all games that have chip damage, but at least like games like BlazBlue, Guilty Gear, and also notably Granblue 2, like, if you can die from chip, there's usually something you can do to stop yourself from taking the chip damage or dying. So BlazBlue, Guilty Gear is the obvious faultless defense. And Granblue, we recently discovered, don't totally quote me on this, but we're pretty sure this works. If you instant block, you won't die of chip. You will take chip damage normally, but you won't die of chip. So there are ways to prevent yourself from dying from chip or taking chip damage. It's just like in the case of a BlazBlue Guilty Gear, you're using resource, right? But this game's resourceful defensive options are sparking, which does let you get that life back, right? Because that life is blue life, so like sparking does give you that life back. So technically that is using a resource. But the only other things you have that's resource really is like vanish, and the other one would be, of course, guard cancel, right? Those are your main resource ones. You could say that resource would save you, like guard canceling would save you from chip, but if someone is just doing this and this did a lot of chip damage, if the first hit was going to kill you, you wouldn't be able to guard cancel, right? So it kind of makes sense, like there's not even a mechanic in the game to deal with chip for you, so it makes sense that there is no chip. But overall, I think like people should kind of be okay with chip damage, because in almost, especially in new games too, in old games, I kind of get it. Like, there were teams in, if you're talking about versus games or characters, if you're talking about like Street Fighter, who they weren't necessarily trying to kill you, they're just trying to like stay out here. It's very frustrating, especially if you're new, to deal with that kind of thing. But in modern games, for the most part, either chip is gone, which I think is kind of rough and not great, or the game has something that will stop you from dying from chip if you use a mechanic in the game somehow. So I like that because it just makes it so that like zoning means something. Zoning means something, and blocking means a little bit more. So okay, let me know what you think. Do you like chip damage? Do you not like chip damage? Why? You can really say just don't like it. It's totally fine. But it would be nice to see like actual reasons for it. I don't really know about NRS. I have to look at NRS, but I think it's kind of current because like Granblue is coming out. This game, if you talk about this game, Dragon Ball, I wouldn't really call a lot of characters zoners. Like, you can kind of call Super Saiyan Vegeta a zoner. Frieza definitely seems to be designed as a zoner, and 21 as well, and Broly as well. But all those characters, like, they don't really chip you out. They either, like, use the zoning to get in, or like you just get hit for trying to force your way in too much. But I do, if we're talking about Granblue specifically, remember that one of people's complaints was legitimately you could die from chip. I heard it this weekend when I played at CEO Otaku, so I figured it'd be something to talk about with y'all. So again, let me know what you guys think. Like and subscribe if you feel like it, and I'll see you next time. Peace out.